There won't be a wedding, but the show is just beginning.
The Facebook notification pinged at 2:47 a.m., but I was already awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering why my fiancée Lydia hadn't come home yet. Her bachelorette party was supposed to end hours ago. I grabbed my phone, expecting maybe a drunk text or a blurry selfie with her girlfriends. Instead, I found myself looking at a photo that sent an icy chill down my spine. There was Lydia, my bride-to-be of 8 years, sitting on some guy's lap at Murphy's bar downtown. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, her face flushed with alcohol and something else I didn't want to name. The man's face was partially turned away, but I could see enough. Expensive shirt, confident smile, the kind of guy who thought he owned whatever room he walked into. The caption read, "Last night of freedom. Thanks, girls, for the wildest bachelorette ever. # no regrets, # last night single." My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. Her friends were all laughing, posting fire emojis and "get it, girl" messages. Sienna, her maid of honor, had written, "What happens at Bachelorette stays at Bachelorette." Oops. I stared at that photo for 10 minutes, my mind racing. 8 years together. 8 years of building a life, planning a future, talking about kids and mortgages and growing old together. And this was how she celebrated our upcoming marriage. Without thinking, I screenshot the photo and posted it to my own Facebook with a simple caption. First night of freedom, actually. I changed my relationship status to single and tagged everyone who mattered, including her father, Richard Hartwell, the most uptight insurance executive in all of Portland, Maine. Then I waited. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone started buzzing with notifications, comments, and messages. Friends, family, co-workers, everyone had something to say. Some were supportive, others were shocked, but most were just hungry for drama. At 3:15 a.m., I heard Lydia's car in the driveway. She burst through the front door like a hurricane, her face twisted with rage. Still wearing her little black dress from the party, makeup smeared. She looked nothing like the composed insurance executive I'd fallen in love with. "What the heck is wrong with you, Eli?" she screamed, waving her phone at me. "Are you completely insane?" I was sitting at our kitchen table, laptop open, watching the social media wildfire I'd started. Our small town of Millbrook thrived on gossip, and I'd just given them the story of the year. Wrong with me? I stood up slowly. At 38, I'd learned to control my temper through years of military service and running my own handyman business. But tonight, that control was hanging by a thread. I'm not the one grinding on strangers at my bachelorette party. It was just a joke. She threw her purse on the counter. God, you're so insecure. It was harmless fun. Harmless? I pulled up the photo on my laptop screen. This looks harmless to you? Lydia glanced at the image, and her face went pale for just a second. Then the defiance came roaring back. You don't trust me after 8 years? That says everything about you, not me. Who is he? Nobody. Just some random guy at the bar. Sienna dared me to take a photo. It meant nothing. But something in her voice told me she was lying. The way her eyes darted away, the slight tremor in her hands. I'd seen enough liars in my time to recognize the signs. My phone rang. Richard Hartwell's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Lydia hissed. I put it on speaker. "Hello, Richard. Elliot Griffin. What in God's name is going on?" Her father's voice was ice cold. "I'm getting calls from half the town about some social media nonsense. Ask your daughter." "Lydia, explain yourself. Now." She grabbed the phone. "Daddy, it's nothing. Eli's having some kind of breakdown. The photo was just a silly joke." "A joke that's now been shared 300 times, I said. "The local news Facebook page just picked it up." Lydia's face went white. "What?" I refreshed my browser. "Channel 8 News. Local groom calls off wedding after viral bachelorette party photo. Congratulations, honey." "You're famous. This is insane," she shouted. "You're ruining everything over nothing." "I'm ruining everything?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not the one who decided to dry hump a stranger 3 days before our wedding." Richard's voice crackled through the phone. "That's enough, both of you. Lydia, come home. We'll discuss this like adults." After she left, I sat in my kitchen and watched the story explode across social media. Friends from high school were commenting. My military buddies were weighing in, even my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Carlin, had somehow found the post and left a string of shocked face emojis. But as the adrenaline faded, a nagging feeling settled in my gut. Lydia's reaction had been too extreme, too defensive. And that man in the photo, there was something familiar about him, even with his face partially hidden. I was going to find out who he was. #, Chapter 2. The next morning brought a parade of phone calls, text messages, and unexpected visitors. Mrs. Carlin knocked on my door at 7 a.m. with a casserole and a hungry look in her eyes. "Such a shame, dear," she said, bustling into my kitchen uninvited. "Though I have to say, I always wondered about that girl. Too ambitious, if you ask me. And those late nights at the office." Late nights? Oh yes, working until all hours. Though between you and me, I saw her car leave at 5:30 most days, then come back around 9 or 10. Strange way to work late, don't you think? I filed that information away and called my best friend Mike, who managed O'Malley's bar downtown. If anyone knew the local gossip, it was Mike. "Dude, you broke the internet," he said when he answered. "Half the town's talking about it. The other half is sharing memes. I need a favor. Can you meet me for lunch?" Already clearing my schedule. We met at O'Malley's during the slow afternoon shift. Mike poured me a beer and slid a basket of wings across the bar. "So what's the real story?" he asked. I showed him the photo again. "Look at this guy. Really look at him." Mike studied the screen, then his eyes widened. "Holy crap. Is that Troy Barron? Who's Troy Barron?" "Regional manager at Hartwell Insurance, Richard's golden boy. Drives a BMW, thinks he's God's gift to women. He comes in here sometimes with clients." Mike paused. "Eli, if Lydia's messing around with Troy Barron, this is bigger than just cheating. That guy's her boss's boss." The pieces started clicking into place. The late nights, the defensive reaction, the panic in her eyes when I posted that photo. This wasn't just about a drunken mistake at a bachelorette party. "I need to know for sure. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time to do some investigating." Mike grinned. "Count me in. But first, you should know, your little social media stunt cost Troy some serious face. Word is Richard called him into the office this morning. The whole company's buzzing about it." That afternoon, I drove to Lydia's office building and parked across the street. At 5:30, just like Mrs. Carlin had said, Lydia walked out to her car. But instead of driving home, she pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward downtown. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding. She drove to the Riverside Apartments, the expensive complex by the waterfront. I watched her park and walk into Building C like she'd done it 100 times before. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a tall man in an expensive suit. Even from a distance, I recognized him from the photo. Troy Barron. They got into his BMW and drove off together. I sat in my truck for an hour, processing what I'd just seen. This wasn't a one-night mistake. This was an affair. When I got home, I called my old Army buddy, Darius, who now ran a private security company in Portland. "I need help with something," I told him. "What kind of help?" "The kind you're good at. Research, surveillance, maybe some creative problem solving." Darius chuckled. "Sounds like someone's in trouble. What's the situation?" I explained everything. The photo, the investigation, what I'd discovered about Troy. "So you want to know how deep this goes?" "I want to know everything. How long it's been going on, what they're planning. All of it. Give me 48 hours. The next morning brought more surprises. Sienna, Lydia's maid of honor, showed up at my door looking nervous. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in, noting how she avoided eye contact. "Look, Eli, I feel terrible about all this. The photo thing got way out of hand." "Did it? Or did it just expose what was already happening?" She fidgeted with her purse strap. "I don't know what you mean." "Troy Barron. How long has Lydia been seeing him?" Sienna's face crumpled. "I can't. I promised I wouldn't." "Sienna, I saw them together yesterday. I know about the apartment. The only question is whether you're going to help me understand what's been going on or whether you're going to keep lying for her." She started crying then, mascara running down her cheeks. 6 months, she whispered. "It started 6 months ago at the company retreat. She said it was just physical, that she loved you but needed something exciting. She made me promise not to tell anyone." "And you thought that was okay?" "I thought it would burn out. I thought she'd get it out of her system and marry you anyway. But then she started talking about maybe calling off the wedding, and I panicked. I thought if she had one last wild night, she'd realize what she was giving up." "So the bachelorette party was what, a test?" "She wanted to see if she could walk away from him. But when he showed up at the bar," Sienna shook her head, "she lit up like a Christmas tree. That's when I knew she was in love with him. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not just the cheating, but the elaborate deception. The months of planning our wedding while she was planning her exit strategy." "There's more," Sienna said quietly. "Troy's been promising to leave his wife. He says once he gets the promotion to vice president, he'll have enough money to make a clean break. Lydia thinks they're going to run away together. His wife, Troy's married. Has been for 15 years. 2 kids in private school. I stared at her. And Lydia knows this? She thinks she's different, that he really loves her this time. After Sienna left, I sat in my garage workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and planned my next move. For 8 years, I'd been the steady, reliable guy. The one who fixed things when they broke, who kept his mouth shut and his head down. But Lydia and Troy had made one crucial mistake. They'd humiliated me publicly, thinking I'd just take it and fade away quietly. They were about to learn that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous when pushed too far. Chapter 3. Darius called me at 6 a.m. on Friday with news. "Your girl's been busy," he said. "I've got hotel receipts, credit card statements, and enough text messages to write a romance novel. Want the highlights? Give me everything." They've been meeting twice a week for 6 months. Always the same hotel, the Riverside Inn downtown. Troy pays cash, but Lydia's been using her credit card for dinners, gifts, even lingerie. She's not exactly covering her tracks. What about the texts? That's where it gets interesting. Troy's been feeding her a line about getting promoted to VP, leaving his wife, the whole fairy tale. But I did some digging into his finances. Guy's leveraged to the hilt. Big mortgage, kids' school tuition, country club memberships. He's not leaving his wife anytime soon. Does Lydia know that? Based on these messages, she's planning to move in with him after your wedding gets officially called off. She's already been looking at apartments. The betrayal cut deeper with each new detail. While I'd been planning our future, she'd been planning her escape. "There's one more thing," Darius said. "Troy's got a reputation at work. This isn't his first affair. Word is he's done this dance before. Promises to leave his wife, strings the woman along for months, then disappears when things get complicated. Send me everything you've got, already in your email. What are you planning?" "I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve." That evening, I drove to O'Malley's to meet Mike. The bar was crowded with the usual Friday night crowd, but Mike had saved me a seat at the end where we could talk privately. "You look like heck," he said, sliding a beer across the bar. "Feel worse. But I've got a plan." I filled him in on what Darius had discovered. Mike's expression grew darker with each detail. "So what's the play?" "First, I'm going to have a conversation with Troy. Man to man." "You sure that's smart? Guy like that probably has lawyers on speed dial." "I'm not going to threaten him, just going to make sure he understands the situation." At 9 p.m., I drove to the Riverside Apartments and waited. Sure enough, Troy's BMW pulled into the parking lot. I watched him walk toward Building C, then got out of my truck. "Troy Barron?" He turned, squinting in the dim light. "Who's asking?" "Eli Griffin." "I think you know who I am." His face went pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. "Look, if this is about that photo, it's about a lot more than the photo." I stepped closer, noting how he instinctively backed toward his car. For all his expensive clothes and smooth talk, Troy was soft. Probably hadn't been in a real fight since high school. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "You're going to end whatever this is with Lydia tonight. And you're going to stay away from her. You can't tell me what to do." "Actually, I can. See, I know about your wife, your kids, your mortgage payments. I know about the other women you've done this to. And I know that Richard Hartwell values his company's reputation above everything else." Troy's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "You're threatening me. I'm informing you. There's a difference. Lydia's an adult. She can make her own choices." "You're right, she can. But so can I." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen, a draft email to Richard Hartwell with photos, hotel receipts, and text message screenshots attached. "One click sends this to your boss, your wife, and every gossip blog in Portland. Your choice." Troy stared at the phone, then at me. "You're bluffing." I hit send. "Oops." The color drained from his face. "You son of a witch!" He lunged at me, but 8 years of military training and 15 years of manual labor had left me in better shape than his gym membership could match. I sidestepped his clumsy swing and grabbed his wrist, twisting his arm behind his back. "Here's some free advice," I said quietly. "Next time you want to destroy someone's life, make sure they don't know how to fight back." I released him and walked back to my truck, leaving him standing in the parking lot, probably wondering how fast he could update his resume. My phone started ringing before I even got home. First Lydia, then Richard, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. The next morning, I woke up to find my story had gone viral again. Someone had recorded video of my confrontation with Troy and posted it online. The comments were brutal, and most of them were on my side. Local handyman school's cheating boss. This is how you handle a homewrecker. Troy Barron got what he deserved. At 10 a.m., Lydia showed up at my house. She looked like she hadn't slept, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and desperate. "You destroyed everything!" she screamed the moment I opened the door. "I destroyed everything? That's Rich! Troy lost his job! Richard fired him this morning." "Good. How can you be so cruel? We love each other," I laughed. "Love? Lydia, you were a game to him. Just like the other women he's done this to." "That's not true. Ask him about Jennifer Morrison. Or Sarah Chen, both former employees who thought they were special too." Her face crumpled. "You're lying." "Am I? When's the last time you heard from Troy?" "Since yesterday, I mean." She pulled out her phone and I could see her scrolling through messages. Her expression changed as she realized what I already knew. Troy had gone silent. "He's probably just figuring out what to do next," she said. But the confidence was gone from her voice. "He's probably figuring out how to explain this to his wife without losing half his assets in a divorce. You don't understand what we have. I understand exactly what you have. 6 months of hotel rooms and lies. And now it's over." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact moment she realized I was right. Troy wasn't coming to rescue her. He wasn't leaving his wife. He wasn't even returning her calls. "I hate you," she whispered. "That's fine. But you're going to hate yourself more when you realize what you threw away." After she left, I called Mike. "How's it feel to be the most famous man in Millbrook?" he asked. "Like I'm just getting started." Chapter 4. The next week brought a parade of consequences that rippled through our small town like stones thrown in a pond. Troy Barron disappeared entirely. Rumor had it his wife kicked him out and he was staying in a motel while looking for work in another state. Lydia moved back in with her father, who was so embarrassed by the scandal that he barely left his house. But my former friends were a different story. It started with Dave and Jennifer Morrison. Yes, the same Jennifer that Troy had apparently seduced and discarded 2 years earlier. They'd been part of our regular social circle, weekend barbecues and game nights, the kind of friends you expect to have forever. Dave called me on Thursday evening. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold. "About what?" "About what you did to Troy and to Lydia." "What I did?" "Don't play dumb, Eli. You destroyed 2 people's lives over a stupid photo." I was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Dave, you do realize Troy was having an affair with my fiancée, right? And that he did the same thing to your wife 2 years ago?" "That's different. Jennifer and I worked through our problems. We're stronger now." "So I should have just let it slide? Married Lydia anyway and pretended nothing happened?" "You should have handled it privately, like an adult. Instead, you turned it into a public circus." The conversation went downhill from there. Dave accused me of being vindictive and cruel. I accused him of having selective memory about his own wife's affair. We both said things we couldn't take back. He wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, I heard from Tom and Susan Bradley, Mark and Carol Chen, and several other couples from our social circle. The message was consistent. I'd gone too far. I was the villain in this story. It became clear that they'd been talking among themselves, building a narrative where I was the bad guy and Lydia and Troy were the victims of my vindictive revenge plot. The breaking point came on Saturday night at O'Malley's. I was having a quiet drink with Mike when Dave walked in with Tom Bradley and Mark Chen. They spotted me immediately and made a beeline for my table. "Well, look who's here," Dave said loudly enough for half the bar to hear. "The town's newest celebrity." "Dave, don't do this here." "Why not? You didn't mind making your business public before." Tom stepped closer. "You know what you are, Eli. You're a bitter, small man who couldn't handle the fact that his woman found someone better." The bar went quiet. Everyone was watching now. Phones probably already recording. "Someone better?" I stood up slowly. "You mean a married man who was using her for love while lying about leaving his wife?" "At least Troy treated her like a queen," Mark added. "When's the last time you took Lydia somewhere nice? When's the last time you bought her flowers or jewelry or made her feel special?" "I was saving for our wedding. You know, the one she was planning to skip out on." "Because you're boring," Dave shouted. "You're a small-town handyman with no ambition, no class, no future. Lydia deserves better than fixing toilets for the rest of her life." The words hit like physical blows. These were supposed to be my friends. People who'd known me for years, who'd eaten at my table and celebrated holidays with me. You want to know what's really pathetic? Tom continued. You're so insecure that you had to destroy everyone else's happiness because you couldn't keep your own woman satisfied. That's enough, Mike said, stepping between us. Stay out of this, Mike, Dave snapped. This is between us and your loser friend here. Something snapped inside me then. The weeks of humiliation, betrayal, and now this. My own friends turning on me to defend the people who'd wronged me. You want to know what's pathetic? I said, my voice deadly calm. What's pathetic is 3 grown men ganging up on someone because they're too spineless to admit their own wives probably cheated too. What did you say? Mark stepped forward. You heard me. Jennifer definitely did, with Troy. And I'm betting if I looked hard enough, I'd find out about the others too. Dave swung at me then, a clumsy haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I ducked and came up with an uppercut that caught him in the solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping. Tom grabbed a beer bottle and came at me, but Mike tackled him before he could swing it. Mark tried to circle around behind me, but I spun and caught him with an elbow to the ribs that sent him stumbling backward into a table. The fight was over in 30 seconds, but the damage was done. Not just the physical damage, though Dave would be sore for a week and Mark would have a nice bruise on his ribs, but the social damage. The final burning of bridges that could never be rebuilt. Get out, Mike told them as they picked themselves up off the floor. All of you. And don't come back. As they limped toward the door, Dave turned back to me. This isn't over, Eli. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. They already know, I replied. I'm the kind who fights back. After they left, the bar slowly returned to normal, but I could feel the stares and whispers. Some people were clearly on my side, but others looked at me like I was a ticking time bomb. You okay? Mike asked. Never better. But that was a lie. The fight had felt good in the moment, but now I was facing the reality of my situation. I'd lost my fiancée, my friends, and probably my reputation in this small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. The smart thing would be to lay low, let the gossip die down, maybe even consider moving somewhere new. But I'd never been accused of being smart. Chapter 5. Monday morning brought the consequences of Saturday night's bar fight. My phone was buzzing with notifications. Someone had recorded the whole thing and posted it online. The video was grainy and the audio was poor, but you could clearly see me fighting 3 men and winning. The comments were split between people calling me a hero and others calling me a violent thug. The local Facebook groups were having heated debates about whether I was justified or just another example of toxic masculinity run amok. But the real surprise came when Darius called. You've been busy, he said. News travels fast. Faster than you think. I've got some interesting information about your former friends. Such as? Such as the fact that they've been planning this for weeks. Ever since the Troy situation went public, they've been meeting at Dave's house, coordinating their response. Coordinating how? Phone records, social media posts, even some emails. They've been working to turn your entire social circle against you. The goal was to isolate you completely, make you the pariah while they positioned themselves as the reasonable adults. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why would they do that? Because you made them look bad. When you exposed Troy and Lydia, you also exposed the fact that all of them knew what was going on and said nothing. They're covering their own asses by making you the villain. What else? Dave's been in contact with Lydia. They're planning something for this weekend. Some kind of public confrontation designed to make you look unstable. Where? The fall festival downtown. Lots of people, lots of cameras. Perfect place to provoke you into doing something stupid. The fall festival was Millbrook's biggest annual event. The entire town would be there, along with visitors from surrounding areas. If Dave and his crew were planning to ambush me there, it would be in front of hundreds of people. There's more, Darius continued. I did some digging into your friends' finances and personal lives like you suggested. Want to know what I found? Tell me. Tom Bradley's been having an affair with his secretary for 8 months. Mark Chen's been embezzling from his construction company to pay gambling debts. And Dave Morrison? He's been buying pills from a dealer in Portland. Not just marijuana, we're talking hard stuff. Pills, powder, the kind that gets you serious jail time. I sat back in my chair processing this information. My former friends weren't just hypocrites, they were criminals. Can you prove all this? Photos, financial records, text messages. These guys aren't as careful as they think they are. Send me everything. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they're planning to give me. A public humiliation they'll never recover from. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, typical October weather in Maine. The fall festival was set up in the town square, with food trucks, craft booths, and a small stage for local bands. Despite the weather, hundreds of people had turned out for the annual tradition. I arrived around noon, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, looking like any other local resident enjoying the festival. But I wasn't there for the food or entertainment. I was there for war. I spotted Dave first, standing near the apple cider stand with Tom and Mark. They were scanning the crowd, clearly looking for me. Nearby, I could see Lydia talking with some of her co-workers, occasionally glancing in Dave's direction. They were all here. Perfect. I walked over to the small stage where a local country band was finishing their set. The festival organizer, Betty Walsh, was standing nearby with a clipboard. "Betty, can I borrow the microphone for a minute?" I asked. "Sure, honey. You want to make an announcement?" Something like that. I climbed onto the stage as the band was packing up their equipment. The microphone was still hot, and when I tapped it, the sound echoed across the square. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" The crowd slowly turned toward the stage. I could see Dave and his friends pushing through the people, realizing what was happening, but unable to stop it. For those who don't know me, I'm Eli Griffin. I've lived in this town my whole life, and I've always believed in treating people with honesty and respect. The square was quiet now, except for the sound of rain pattering on the tent roofs. Recently, some people have been spreading stories about me, calling me unstable, violent, a bad friend, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to set the record straight. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. This is a recording of Dave Morrison arranging a pills deal in Portland last month. The audio was crystal clear. Dave's voice, discussing prices and quantities, arranging a regular supply. The crowd murmured as they recognized his voice. Dave's face went white. He started pushing toward the stage, but there were too many people in the way. This next recording is Tom Bradley on the phone with his secretary, discussing their affair and how to hide it from his wife. Tom's voice filled the square, talking about hotel rooms and lies, laughing about how clueless his wife was. I could see Susan Bradley in the crowd, her face a mask of shock and rage. And finally, we have Mark Chen discussing how he's been stealing money from his construction company to pay off gambling debts. Mark's voice was the final nail in the coffin, casually discussing his embezzlement like it was a minor accounting error. The crowd was buzzing now, people pulling out phones to record, others calling friends to tell them what was happening. "These are the men who called me unstable," I said into the microphone. "These are the people who said I went too far when I exposed my fiancé's affair. I'll let you decide who the real villains are in this story." I unplugged my phone and stepped down from the stage. Dave, Tom, and Mark had finally made it through the crowd, their faces twisted with rage and panic. "You son of a witch!" Dave screamed, launching himself at me. But I was ready for him. I sidestepped his charge and let his momentum carry him into the stage platform. He hit it hard and went down in a tangle of limbs. Tom came next, swinging wildly. I caught his wrist and twisted, using his own force to flip him over my hip. He landed hard on the wet grass and didn't get up. Mark was smarter. He pulled out a knife. The crowd screamed and scattered as Mark advanced on me, the blade gleaming in the gray afternoon light. But 20 years of military and civilian training had taught me how to handle armed opponents. I grabbed a folding chair from nearby and used it to block his first thrust. The knife stuck in the metal frame, and while he was trying to pull it free, I swung the chair around and caught him in the side of the head. He dropped like a stone. The whole fight had lasted maybe 90 seconds, but it felt like hours. I stood in the middle of the town square, surrounded by my defeated enemies, while hundreds of people stared at me in shock. Then the applause started. It began with one person, then spread through the crowd like wildfire. People were cheering, whistling, taking pictures and videos. Someone shouted, "That's how you handle bullies!" And the crowd roared its approval. I looked around and saw Lydia standing near the cider stand, her face pale with shock. Our eyes met across the square, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. She was finally beginning to understand what she'd unleashed when she decided to betray me. But I wasn't done yet. I walked over to where she was standing, the crowd parting before me like I was Moses crossing the Red Sea. "Hello, Lydia." "Eli, please. I have something for you." I pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. She opened it with shaking hands and pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. "Those are pictures of Troy with his wife and kids at Disney World last weekend," I said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. along with the lease agreement for their new house in Florida. Turns out he didn't lose his job after all. He got transferred, and he took his family with him. Lydia stared at the photos, her face crumbling as she realized the truth. Troy hadn't been ruined by our scandal. He'd used it as an excuse to disappear and start fresh somewhere else, just like he'd probably done before. He never loved you, I said quietly. You were just another game to him. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. How did you? I hired a private investigator. Turns out Troy's done this same routine in 3 different cities. Always targets ambitious women, always promises to leave his wife, always disappears when things get complicated. The crowd was listening to every word, phones recording everything. Lydia's humiliation was now complete and public, just like mine had been. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this to me? Because you did it to me first. The only difference is everything I'm saying is true. I turned to address the crowd one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to remember this day. Remember what happens when you try to destroy an innocent man to cover up your own crimes. Remember what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. I walked through the crowd toward my truck, people stepping aside to let me pass. Behind me, I could hear sirens approaching. Someone had finally called the police about the fight. But I wasn't worried. I had video evidence of Mark pulling the knife, witnesses who'd seen Dave and Tom attack me first, and a crowd full of people who just watched me expose 3 criminals and a cheating ex-fiancée. As I drove away from the festival, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. For the first time in months, I was smiling. The quiet handyman was gone. In his place was something harder, something that couldn't be broken or betrayed or humiliated, something that fought back and won.